Hi, I'm Kelly and I'm a Marianne.
I'm Rachel and I'm a Stacy.
I'm Julia and I'm the founder and president of the What You Should Read podcast, and I'm a Christy.
I'm Allison and I'm a Stacy.
Hey.
I don't know.
Welcome, Allison. Allison Dickson is our guest today to recap. We're recapping episodes 1 and 2 of the Netflix series, The Babysitter's Club. So thanks for joining us. We had you on our regular podcast to talk about your book, The Other Mrs. Miller, and you are our first repeat guest. So we're super excited to have you.
I'm thrilled. I was when Kelly mentioned, or Marianne rather, mentioned it, or no, you did, Christy.
Yeah.
I think you contacted me. That's right. But anyway, when you mentioned that, and I hadn't thought of the Babysitter's Club in about 25 to 30 years, something like that. I'm aging myself a little bit. But it just brought back such a rush because my friends and I passed those books back and forth so much. So, and I had no idea there was a Netflix series. So I just got right on, and was so excited when you mentioned the Phantom Caller series, what episode 2 was about and everything. I'm like, okay, this is perfect.
Yeah, I thought as a writer of thrillers and horror that The Phantom Caller, being the scariest book in the series,
Yes.
obviously, would be right up your alley. So
Agreed. You thought well of me, and I appreciate that.
Well, in an earlier episode of our podcast, we had a general discussion with our friend AJ McCombs just about the series as a whole. And in that episode, we talked a lot about episode 1, but we thought it would be good to just catch up and do a brief run through of that episode just to catch our listeners up if they haven't seen it. And then we'll do kind of a more detailed recap of the second episode, which is Claudia and the Phantom phone calls, or Claudia and the Phantom Caller. So Kelly, do you want to start us off?
Okay, well, good luck for all of us because I don't know that I've done anything briefly in my entire life. So we should work out a hand signal. But in the first episode, Christy has a near-death experience and a great idea. And what she wants to do is start a babysitter's club. So she talks to her best friend, Marianne, and her kind of estranged friend, Claudia. We learn that Christy does not like new people at all, even if it's nice, especially not if they're dating her mom, but really no new people in general. We learn that her soon-to-be stepsister, Karen, is spooky and fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, thanks to the book, we all learned what decorum meant.
Yes.
Right. So she gets her friends together to form a new business where anyone who needs a sitter can call one phone number and reach 4 experienced 12-year-olds to care for their child. Which, when I read the books as a kid and I read them all, I was like, that's a fantastic idea. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know if you talked about this before. Did any of you babysit when you were that age? I mean,
yeah.
Same. I mean, that was like my income stream, except it wasn't so much a club. It was almost like we each had our turf and nobody crossed each other's turf. It was a little, well, we were a little more turf driven. I'm like, no, I cover this house and you get that into the neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, that was our main thing. But I never hired any 12-year-olds to babysit my kids. So it just showed like an interesting change.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't know how many 12-year-olds are sitting these days.
Yeah.
I mean, I would babysit for my brother and sister at that age because I was 5 and 6 years older than them.
Right.
So my parents definitely left me in charge, as they should.
Yeah.
Many times.
When I was 12, I took a Red Cross babysitter's course.
Nice.
And I think Lenny took it with me, our brother. And it had first aid and even like infant CPR and like what to do in the event of various different emergencies. It was very interesting. And mostly I babysat for my cousin who lived close by. But then when I was 13, I started babysitting more for non-relatives.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get good bit more of that, like when my mom went back to work and she was in a more corporate environment, and she sort of went up the ranks a little. And so then like her coworkers would know that, oh, they have a, you know, she has a teenage daughter who's been babysitting since she was 11, 12 years old. And so I ended up with a lot of gigs that way. But by the time I was 15, 16, I had my own social life. So I was like, I don't want to watch my kids.
Yeah, I didn't want to babysit when I was.
But yeah, that was, so I mean, that was really what I loved about the Babysitters Club, was it felt kind of like it was something I could directly relate to as a kid who was babysitting, and, you know, had some fun experiences. But I think, you know, I don't know. I think it's really cool though that it's available now for this new generation, and it's been upgraded to sort of mirror their old cultural experiences, and hopefully we'll get some babysitters out of it. Because I tell you, I mean, it's a great thing to teach a kid, for someone that age to take on that kind of responsibility. And I think I don't know, I would like to see more of that in the upcoming generation. So
I totally agree. The characters are good role models for young girls.
Very much so.
So well, thanks, Kelly, for that. That was very brief. I thought that was of the first episode.
You did well. You did very well.
I made myself stop.
Yeah.
I very much could have kept going.
So now the Babysitters Club is fully operational. It's up and running. So it's time for episode 2, Claudia and the Phantom Caller. So this episode starts with one of my favorite, I guess, tropes from movies or television, and it's someone flinging a closet door open and rifling through their clothes. I love that. And it starts off with this line, which is so great, and it's Claudia's voiceover, and it says, "I'm good at a lot of things." And I just, Kelly, I think you texted that to us when you first saw it. And do you want to kind of start us off? I mean, that's just such a great way to start the episode.
Yeah.
I feel like even now, as a grown-up, it's hard for me to say, here's stuff I'm good at. And I don't know if that's like imposter syndrome, or if we're all raised to not be braggy about things.
Yeah.
And when I say we all, I mean women specifically, because I don't think I have that problem. So I loved that Claudia was like, I'm good at a lot of things, and then lists them, all of them. And she doesn't sound, you know, like she's conceited or whatever. It's just very matter of fact. Like, I'm good at art. I'm very good at art. And she is. Yeah. And I just thought the whole series is great, but it seems like every episode has a moment of that where it's like, God, I'm really glad kids are seeing that, specifically girls. Like, it's okay to say you're good at stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That you're always catching yourself, even as fully grown women, kind of qualifying your abilities in some way. I'm okay at this, but I'm not as good as I want to be. But there's always something to go along with that. You can't really it's hard for us to call ourselves unqualified good at something. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's almost like as kids, we are more free to be confident in our abilities. And I do think about that. When I was younger, I was a lot more comfortable saying, I'm really smart. I'm really good in school. I'm good at this and that. And now if I praise myself, I kind of qualify it, like you said, or make a little joke.
It's to brace ourselves against criticism, right? Because that's when it comes in around about late high school into college, when they start being less nice about, you know, or they start pointing out the flaws, and, you know, maybe in the hopes that we can improve, but it's still, we internalize that because your whole life you've maybe been told you're really good at something. And then when someone points out that maybe you could improve in some way, it's like, oh, maybe I'm not so good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened to me with writing actually in college. I stopped writing for 10 years over that. So, but if somebody
you came back to it.
Yeah, but I mean, it took a while, but if someone had said, this is part of the process, this is normal, you're still really good at this, but how about if we could make you even gooder, you know, at it without making you feel like you're a total screw up. Yeah. I mean, I think it's such a speed bump for kids in that time of life.
And not to jump ahead, and not to spoil anything, but I think Claudia kind of encounters that a little bit later on in the series too, and it's handled so well. So
I can't wait. Okay, good. I was curious about that because I mean, she's this really great artist and she's very self-assured and I mean, she encounters shortcomings in this episode that of course I could totally relate to with the math. You know, I was that kid. I think that's the one thing about Claudia that I felt like I could relate to was that I had the things I knew I was good at and that I liked, but when I didn't like something, I just didn't do it or I didn't apply myself. I didn't care. And so, and math was one of those things. And then I eventually told myself I'm bad at math. And I told myself that all through school and all through pretty much until my second year in college, when I finally got a math teacher who opened my mind and empowered me. And I'm like, I can do math. I'm pretty good at math. I just didn't know, and I didn't tell myself I could do it. And maybe it wasn't taught in a way that I believed that I could do it. It took that long. And so that's, 15 years wasted. And so I felt for her. I'm like, oh yeah, that, you want to focus on what you're good at, but part of me is like, no, you got to give yourself that belief that you can, but sometimes it takes a special key to open that part of your brain up, I think. So,
so Claudia says, I'm good at fashion and art and really good at babysitting. And the first sort of scene that we see is her in art class where we meet Trevor Sanborn.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
That poor kid. I wanted to... We'll get to that. But that kid...
So these two 12-year-old art students are talking about famous artists that they know. And, did you see this at the
Chelsea. It was at
And also when he says, oh, my dad and this other artist, they, showed together at the Chelsea back in the 90s.
Oh my God, right? When we were all reading these books. Or 80s, whatever.
Well, that's a good point. I wonder if that was a little fan service call out, just a little like nudge to those of us that read these books in the 90s. Like, you're old now.
Reminded of that every day.
You're the same age as these kids' parents. Yeah, thanks. And I just want to call out Claudia is wearing a pair of watermelon earrings, which I do believe she was wearing in the original book series at some point. So that was fun.
Adorable. I love her sense of style and the whole
legend.
Yeah. Oh God. And I just can't wait to talk about the later part of the episode because of what she was wearing in that. But oh my God. Okay. I just
her outfits are amazing.
Yeah.
And then Trevor subtly asks her out in the way that a 12-year-old boy would, which is, maybe I'll see you there at the dance. They're talking about the Halloween hop. And I think this is interesting. This is, I think, maybe the very first really change from the book plot, because in the books, what happens is Claudia is not asked out by the boy who likes her. She is basically stalked when you think about it. He's like prank calling her. He is basically calling her and then hanging up, and his excuse is that, I didn't know how to ask you out, right? Which, you don't remember that, Kelly?
I have probably not read that book in, I would guess, a solid 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember.
That was definitely he and another boy named Alan Gray, who they've completely erased from the narrative, which is good because
that kid's a jerk. I remember that.
Yeah. But they were basically calling the babysitters and hanging up and making them afraid that it was this phantom caller that was on the loose.
Right. Oh, that sounds familiar. Mm-hmm.
So I was just glad that in the series they did away with that, because that's just problematic in so many ways. And they just, went with, they like each other and he asks her, quote unquote, to the dance. So I thought that was good.
Oh, by the way, I have to interject something.
Yeah.
Who had that phone? I had that phone, that clear plastic telephone. I had that in my bedroom.
That's awesome.
I squealed when I saw that. So many late nights on the phone. over the years, like with that very telephone. I was just, I'm like, it's
funny.
Vintage now. Oh my God, it's a vintage device.
I never had I never had my own phone.
Oh,
I know. So then we cut to the meeting, and Christy, my girl, she lives in a black and white world. It's, did he ask you to the dance or did he not ask you to the dance?
Right.
My favorite quote from Christy in this scene is, I wrote it down word for word.
What is it?
It's, when she's talking about what's babyish is this dance. Giving boys yet another way to be disappointing and setting up girls for a lifetime of making excuses for them.
Yep.
Oh my God, Christy, I love you.
She nailed it. Now, can someone remind me, was she this feminist in the book or was she not? I can't recall. Like, she comes out with some really good lines that are like, whoa, girl, you are woke. I love you. And throughout the series that I've seen so far. So I just can't remember if she
was. I think it was more though that y'all are being silly by caring about boys and clothes. But in so you're right. In the series, they've definitely made it more about feminism and
and I mean, it's fantastic. I loved it.
And Stacy and Claudia, who are the cool girls, have to kind of explain to Christy how this works. And he can't just come right out.
She has Joe March vibes going on, like when Meg wants to go to the to the ball, and she's like, I don't understand. Yeah,
that's a great point. And then they start teasing Marianne about Logan, who's a boy that she likes, and Marianne says, well, Watson calls, right, to get us, or no, Christy's mom calls to get a sitter.
Right. Yeah.
And Christy just refuses to babysit for Watson's kids still. She doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So Marianne says that her dad is worried about this phantom caller that's on the loose, and he doesn't want her staying out late, doesn't want her going to the dance. So there's like spooky music, so we know that this episode is a mystery. But yeah, anything else about that scene?
Christy gets advice a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like they're definitely setting the stage for Christy to come out. I mean, it does not happen this season, but I feel like she's definitely...
I think you're right, Kelly, because every other sitter in the series has an episode or at least a scene where there's a boy love interest, right?
Yes.
Except for Christy. And I think if they were really going to like make a decision on that in one direction, they would have maybe come up with a character, brought Bart in earlier, or kept the Alan Gray character, who were two boys in the series that Christy had either crushes on or went to a dance with or something. But in no way is that referenced at all in the series. So I hope if there's a season 2, I would love to see that storyline. Maybe the rival softball coach that comes on the scene in book 20, I believe, is maybe it's not Bart, maybe it's Betty.
Maybe. I mean, the show has been so progressive and showing different, and representing different types of people and kids. So I would bet it's gonna go there. And it has the guts to go there and the bravery to just show everything. So and it's not trying to tiptoe or trying to be subtle, which is one thing I really loved about it so far. Like, wow, you were going there without any trepidation, and I love it. So
I totally agree. Yeah. So then in the next scene, Claudia is in her kitchen cooking with her grandmother, Mimi, which is just such a sweet scene. I think the actress that plays Mimi is just wonderful.
Absolutely wonderful. Loved her. Yeah.
Everything with Mimi I thought was just perfect. Like, she has such a great grandmother vibe. And every time she talks to Claudia and she's like, my Claudia,
Yeah. And I loved how, she said, parents don't always understand their kids, but grandparents, there's always that, because there is that bit of separation. Parents get so caught up in what their kids are doing right now and what they're going to be. And they're just their head is so far in it. Whereas that little layer of separation gives, and plus that life experience where grandma's on the far side of what having raised her kids and knowing that they make it to the other side despite all the crisis and, all the things that seem so huge. And so a grandparent can look at all this and go, you'll be fine, relax, let's, and so I love that so much. That bond is really great. And just seeing more of her further on in the series too. She continues to be great. So
Yeah. So Mimi's like, parents just don't understand. And then we cut to dinner with the parents, and it's true. They have no chill. They're just like, what's happening in math class? How are your grades?
Yeah.
Need to get into a good college, 12-year-old daughter.
When you're 12, I mean, this is when it gets on your permanent record. Really? No, I've never. What?
No. College.
That's terrifying.
College get your 7th grade transcripts.
No, they don't. I mean, not any college I ever went to. That's for sure. So.
And I gotta say this about Janine. I love Janine, and maybe I was spoiled by having like the best big sister ever. But why did Janine like make it worse for Claudia? Why did she take Claudia's side? I'm sorry.
I guess because the show, in so far as I've seen anyway, it doesn't have a villain yet, or really any real big villain. I think she is the closest thing. It's like we gotta kick a villain into this story somehow, And I think so.
Conflict.
Yeah, so maybe the mysterious genius big sister that, a computer genius that hides out in her room all day, so that's about the equivalent. And
she's only a couple of years older than Claudia, so I do think there's also like a sibling rivalry backstory that we don't see fully yet, and that might be part of why Janine is such a pill.
Yeah,
like,
and
she's
honestly,
basically like,
I would love to see more of that story. If and I love though, like, there's such a strong difference between them. My brother was more like 6 years older than me, and we were quite different, but we were also very similar in ways too. I inherited a lot of his tastes in music and style and things like that. So we did connect so if they're too different, it's almost like, well, let's bring them together in some way. I'd like to see a little more of that commonality between them come out. So
but I love the face that Mimi makes when Janine, so the parents say, well, we want to see a good grade on your next math test. And Janine suggests that if Claudia doesn't get a good grade, that she can't go to the Halloween pop.
Right.
And her parents are like, oh, what a great idea. And Mimi is just like, Mimi has this look on her face that is just, I'll have to put a screenshot or something in the video for the YouTube show, because I paused it and rewound it to look at it again. It's so that it's just so perfect.
I bet you anything that there is a deleted scene for that episode that shows Janine reading a psychology textbook and learning about that. And then that night at dinner, I think it's really just like, oh my God, I just heard about this. I think this would work.
Yeah.
And then later she was probably like, oh, I really just derailed my little sister.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really malicious. I really don't. But I'm an expert, so I don't know.
I mean, maybe, I was really pulling for Claudia at that point. I'm like, come on, girl, pull it out. You could do this,
Of course.
Beat the system. I mean, so actually that's the thing, like things kind of went in a direction I wasn't quite expecting. So I do like that a show that is geared toward young people surprised the jaded, cynical storyteller in me a little bit.
It's a wholesome story. You're right.
It's very wholesome, but it felt new too. So
it's wholesome, but not like annoying or cloyingly. It's not too sweet. I felt. It's just sweet enough.
I agree.
Then we cut to Marianne's house, where the scary music is playing again. She walks into a dark house, and we see her dad, played by Mark Evan Jackson.
He's great, by the way. I was so surprised to see him and so happy to see him.
Same.
And this is when she was late, right? She was late getting home like by 20 minutes, and
she's 20 minutes late. And we talked about that casting decision too when we talked to AJ, when we had the general discussion about the show. And it's just he is the perfect choice for her dad. Yeah. He's buttoned up but funny. And yes, he's mad because she's 20 minutes late. So he takes away her fancy new phone, quote unquote. And gives her that
little mouse phone or whatever.
It's like, dun, 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 a flip phone.
Eek. And it can only dial 4 numbers. His for 3 times and 911.
Right. So then we cut to school. It's the day of the big test. And here's another inspired fashion choice by Claudia.
Yes.
Rachel, do you remember what...
Is Ruth Bader Ginsburg chic?
Yep. Oh, she was looking good though, and those pearl earrings. I mean, she was making it work.
And the cuffs, it was great. But super fast though, going back to Marianne and her dad, how creepy is it that he is sitting in the living room in the dark until she's all the way in the house, and then he just flips the light on? Like, what time is it?
I have had that happen to me as not as a teenager, because my parents relaxed my curfew when I was about 16, but about that age, not, maybe 13, 14, where I thought, oh, it's dark, she's in bed. but it was later. Like you said, it was like 8 o'clock. It was 8:20.
Right.
So I'm creeping in at like 11, and thinking they're in bed, and then all of a sudden light flips on, and I'm like, oh God. But at the same time, I think I find myself having to like separate myself from what I grew up with, the experience I grew up with. I grew up with a bit more of that traditionalist, parenting, in some ways, versus me, where I'm sort of now I'm not the anti-helicopter, but I'm not, I'm kind of more of a hands-off, like kind of give me a reason not to trust you first, and then I'm not going to trust you, kind of formula. And so I felt honestly kind of like scared for Marianne a little bit. Like, he is really, really overbearing. Like, whoa, dude, let up on this kid. I was like, because I look at Marianne and she's very like little girlish, and she's very innocent, and she's very timid, and it's like, eek. Let up, Dad.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we hear more about it later in the series, and he's he's a single dad, right? Yeah. So I'm sure he's overcompensating quite a bit to raise his little girl. But yeah, he's super strict. He does say that there's a specific reason he's angry in this episode, and that's because the Phantom Caller, dun dun dun, is on the loose in Stony Brook or in nearby Fairfield County. I don't know Connecticut geography, so I don't know how.
Oh, it is Connecticut. Okay, I forgot the state. Okay, yeah.
So at school, Marianne has to tell her friends, I can't babysit for Watson's kids, and I have this stupid flip phone now. And Christy flips out. She's not happy.
Which Christy flips out a bit. Yeah. That's her thing. Yeah. She wears her temper on her sleeve.
She does. But Marianne gets a little upset too, because Christy is basically like, your dad's, totally out of line or whatever. And Marianne kind of does a low blow, I think. And
a little bit.
Yes. Because Christy's dad left the family years ago. And so Marianne's basically like, well, what would you know about dads and how they parent or whatever?
That was an oof moment. Yeah. Definitely.
And you can tell she feels bad about it right away. And then she tries to talk to Christy or apologize via flashlight, which was their secret way of communicating.
Yeah.
And even then, Christy was like, I see the message received, curtain closed. Like, you got to work a little harder to get Christy's forgiveness and trust, which I think, oh God, I don't want to be jumping ahead an episode. Did that come out in this episode or the first episode with Stacy, where
She catches her in the lie.
Yeah. Was that the first episode?
That's
Okay.
the first episode.
So Christy, and this is again another episode of really smart writing when you factor in the fact that Christy's dad, left the family. I imagine she just seems to have some really ingrown trust issues. And time and time again, she's having to like relearn or learn to trust and learn to forgive, and open herself up a little more. Like that event really closed her off. It's just really good, smart writing that takes into account real personality issues that happen as a result of, heartbreak and trauma. I really respected that. It felt like there was a lot of thought put into, instead of just saying, oh, she's just being a brat. No, I mean, there's a reason why Christy is the way that she is. You can actually go and look and see why she's a little harder, I think, as a character, and maybe more feministic in a sense, like in that sense of independence, because a man broke her mom's heart, the dad thing. I really think you can tie a lot of that back into her character decisions and things. So that's just, I really appreciated that. It doesn't feel like tacked on. It feels earned. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Well, on a kind of related note, we always think of Marianne as being the one who avoids conflict.
Yeah.
But especially in the first couple episodes, whenever Christy is upset, she literally runs away.
Yes.
Like she ran away from the dinner table when she was really kind of rude about Watson.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Every chance she gets, really kind of rude about Watson. But and then when Marianne says that awful thing about her dad, she just like literally runs away.
Right.
Yeah. It's like she's waiting for people that she's waiting for someone to hurt her. She's waiting for, the thing with her dad that happened, for that to happen again. And so I think that goes back to the black and white thinking too. It's like she has to hold on to these rules for her life, for her, these things. Like it's either good or bad,
Oh yeah. I mean, I love that consistency of the characters really across the board. Everything that they've done and what they say really holds true to who they are.
Yeah. Totally.
And with Christy, the Watson, she was so hard. I was cringing on some of the Watson scenes just because I think that was the Stacy in me, like I was like, I wouldn't be that. I would never. But at first Watson's like, oh yeah, he seems kind of like a goofy douchebag, but he kind of, there's a good guy there. I don't, but again, I'm not all the way in, so you might be knowing things I don't know, but I feel
we won't spoil it.
No, oh God, no. I was ready to believe in you, Watson. No, but at least from what I've seen so far. But he has some interesting kids, but we'll get to that.
Well, he has an interesting kid.
He has an interesting kid, right? I haven't really gotten to know the boy too much, so.
Well, we're almost there actually. So anything else before we move on from those scenes?
I really liked the music they played when she spots Trevor across the courtyard and she's like so excited. I thought it was cute music.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And then right after the lunch scene when she gets to her test, well, there's a scene with Trevor before that, but I just want to say when she gets to her test, her teacher says it's Judgment Day. And what kind of teacher says is that?
That certainly doesn't foster confidence, because I think that's part of it, right? It's like if you have someone intimidating the heck out of you, you're not going to feel like you're going to pass the test.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the teachers at Stony Brook Middle School are not really instilling great values. I mean, Christy's teacher punishes her for pointing out that women were not adequately represented in the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
So then Claudia, turns out she failed the test. So she's talking to Stacy about it, and Stacy's only concern is that Claudia go to the dance, because she says, I'm new here. I don't know anyone else at this school. You have to be there.
Yeah.
Take my test, erase my name and put your name, and basically lie to your parents so you can go to this.
I would have done that. Again, that moment.
That was going to be my question. So this is the moral dilemma, right? Of the episode. So I don't No, I don't think I would have. I think that I was too scared of getting caught in a lie and of disappointing my parents that I would have been.
Well, here's the thing. I wouldn't have been Claudia. I would have been the Stacy. I couldn't have done it. Oh, no. I would have offered the test. I would have offered to help her cheat. I don't think that I could have. Oh no. I was like, in that situation, there was no way in hell, because I know my mom would have taken one look at that handwriting or something and had been like, or the first thing she would have said was like, no, I want to see the test. Because there was no getting by my mom with stuff like that.
Now that I'm thinking about it, though, I think I might have been more afraid for them to know I'd gotten a bad grade. That was a huge thing for me. I still don't think I could have brought myself to like give them a fake test. I probably would have been like, oh, I lost it.
Like you just accept the fate that is about to fall on you. And live with that fear. But the idea of cheating or handing in a forgery, it's almost like handing in a forged report card. My brother used to forge his report cards because they were all F's, and he used to. I could never. I mean, when I would get my report card and I would see a bad grade, I would just like mope all the way home and just be like, and then I would like hand it, but it's like, but no. There's no way in heck I could have done that.
So. Kelly, Rachel, any other thoughts on that scene?
Oh, no one would ever believe that I got a 94 on a math test. Like, they'd just be like, oh yeah, nice try.
That's the other thing.
What's the real grade?
Like, if they were thinking critically about their kid who's been failing math the whole time, and then you see F, and then A, I don't know. Like, if my kid had done that, I think I might have been like, that's quite a turnaround.
Yeah.
We want to see like maybe a 70, 72.
Right. We were expecting a C+.
Right. But we're getting right into A territory here. Come on. So yeah, I think either way, the fact that her parents were just ready to take an A at face value, I'm like, you're just looking at the paper. You're not looking at your kid. You're not thinking about, but that kind of factors in a little bit as well. So later on.
So then we're back in the art room with Trevor Sanborn.
That moment. Oh. Yeah.
So she goes, and Trevor's looking at his painting and he's sad. And he basically says that his dad thinks his paintings are derivative.
I hate that word.
Yeah. But it's just I thought it was kind of funny too, because these little 12-year-olds are talking like they're 40-year-old art.
That's true.
Critics.
And I'm like, especially when a 12-year-old, when you tell a 12-year-old they're derivative, what 12-year-old is not? That is how they learn about the world. They derive and they copy, they observe, they're modeling. That's the whole thing about childhood. If you're a parent and you're telling your 12-year-old they're derivative, then you need to have a word with yourself, because that ain't cool. But I do know parents that have done that to their kids, and maybe not said that exact word right, but they're as critical in that sense, and they're so hard on their kids. And I see a very tortured artist in Trevor in the future, and he's going to be hurting himself and other people a lot because he's like struggling.
Because he never got approval from his dad, because his dad didn't just say, I love you no matter what. Yeah, I think Trevor's dad might be the worst character.
He's the off-screen villain, right? I mean, that's just this you can already see the darkness in this poor boy. I was just like, I hope that I'm really hoping and praying that he goes on to, tell his dad that, stuff it, old man, I'm doing my own thing, we're all derivatives, screw you.
But but it kind of plays into the theme of the episode, which is that kids are feeling like the kids in this episode are feeling like their parents expectations of them, or they're not living up to their parents' expectations. But what Claudia realizes in this moment is that she's good at a lot of things, right? She said at the beginning of the episode, and maybe worrying about the things that you're not as good at is not something that you should be as concerned about, and she says, my favorite line of the whole episode is that feeling that makes you feel sad and scared and not good enough. That's the real phantom caller.
Oh, yes.
It's
I
not
completely
real.
agree.
Yeah. Like it's not a real thing. You are good enough and there's no reason to be sad. That's just a phantom caller. I
hang up on that phantom caller every day still of my life.
Same.
So
Same.
I think too, it's great that a 12-year-old recognizes this. You think when I was 12, I was like, no, that's, but I love that though, that these kids are making this realization and it feels organic. It doesn't feel like it's fed to them by an adult. It's an experience that they're having, and kids are just more attuned to this kind of stuff these days too, than we were, I think.
It's such a great message.
Yeah.
So then, Kelly, we are on to your favorite scene.
Yes.
Yay! Oh, I know this scene. We were geeking out a little bit about that this morning.
So they're at Watson's mansion. Christy's about to babysit his kids while Watson and Christy's mom go to a Halloween party. They're dressed as dogs, I guess. Their costumes.
Those dogs are rabbits. I couldn't tell.
Yeah. They were not great costumes.
No, they were super dumb. And I don't know. Watson is such a nerd. He has this dumb whispering corner in his hallway. He's like, "Ooh, watch this, Christy."
She just stands there with this blank face like, so?
Yeah.
That, again, would not have been me at that age. Probably not even now at 40. I would have been like, oh, that's so cool. Because I'm like, okay, I'm going to like act like I'm really excited so you'll go away. That's that's how I go. And she's just like,
I feel like I at least would have felt, pretended to be excited for Andrew because he was so cute. He was like, yeah.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
I think that it's
sweet.
interesting though to see that, like, that authenticity of reaction and going like, you're not afraid to just look unimpressed. I am impressed.
So then, Kelly, the next scene. Do you want to explain the next scene?
I want to explain everything about it.
Yes,
So first, we have a wake for Karen Brewer's doll, Krakatoa.
The doll's name.
Okay, do you guys know what Krakatoa is? Because I looked it up. So Krakatoa is a caldera in Indonesia.
Yeah.
That was formed in the early 1800s. And a caldera, I had to look this up, is a large cauldron-like hollow that forms shortly after the emptying of a magma chamber / reservoir in a volcanic eruption.
Yeah.
So it's cauldron-like. So it's very witchy.
Yeah.
Very much. And can we call back again to the moment with the witch, quote unquote, that lives next door? Didn't she give her a name, or
Morbid of Destiny?
Okay, that was the name that Karen gave her. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to be sure on that. Okay, awesome.
That is not her actual name.
Right.
And fun fact, my friend Josh's wife Lindsay and I are going to start an 80s, 90s cover band called Morbid of Destiny. We have no musical talent. Look for us coming to a living room near you sometime soon.
I think your first single should be Krakatoa is an Atheist.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God, Julia, that is great.
So Karen is basically every creepy little girl in every horror movie, right? Like
she's the little girl I was deep in my soul that I was afraid to express. Like that girl. That's the horror writer I came to be, but like I was watching her and I'm like, she is unapologetically weird Wednesday Addams story here, and I love her.
Yep.
So
baby goth.
Yep.
It's fantastic. So she has this doll in like a box, and Christy's like, well, should we close her eyes? And she's like, it's dark enough in the grave.
Not wrong, no.
Who broke this little girl?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
you wonder what her mother was like.
I would love it if Karen's mom is like a goth chick, and that's why she and Watson didn't work out, because she was like, you're too conservative and straight-laced. I want to be
Could
goth
you see
and
a
spooky.
goth with Watson? Jesus. Oh my God.
They were high school sweethearts, and it just didn't work out.
The money was no longer enough to keep her satisfied. That's for sure.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Christy's phone keeps ringing from an unknown number, and it's very scary, and we get the scary music again. We think it's the Phantom Caller.
We have to talk about what the Phantom Caller actually does, as explained by my best friend Karen Brewer.
Oh, yes.
Because, so he calls you from an unknown number and you answer, and he keeps getting creepier and creepier, and then I don't know how this part works, but at some point you realize he is inside the house, like
the classic line, right?
Yeah.
Was it The Babysitter? Wasn't that the name of the movie?
When a Stranger Calls.
When a Stranger Calls, yeah, it's coming from inside the house. That's one of the greatest lines of all time. So
I used to babysit in high school, and my best friend would actually call the house where I was sitting and be like, "Have you checked the children?"
Oh my God.
Ask me how many times we watched When a Stranger Calls.
I love it.
A lot.
My mom told me about that story, about the age that these girls were when I was a babysitter, and told me about that story.
Yeah.
And then we watched it later on, but she built it up so much that she actually had me afraid to babysit for a while.
Yeah.
Because my mom is just a very macabre person as well. So yeah, I mean, that whole concept that the call is coming from inside the house chilled me to the freaking bone as a kid. So yeah, I mean, no.
I don't know how that would work now in 2020. Like, do you hear like an echo maybe? But then she's like watching you, maybe listening to you or something, and then she's like smelling you. And there is something about that, like, it just freaks me out every time, like someone you can't see close enough to smell your shampoo or something.
Yeah.
It's deeply right? It is deeply terrifying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen Brewer.
Thank you, Karen Brewer.
She's going to be a great writer someday. That's all I got to say.
Yes. Karen Brewer. Oh, someone should come up with that as a pen name for a horror writer. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
So back at Claudia's house, she ends up telling her mom and dad the truth. She's like, look, I failed the test. And they love her, they say, but they won't let her go to the dance. You know, they accept who she is, but...
We have to talk about her costume. Okay.
Oh, right. Okay.
My God, where did she get the idea to dress up as the lady from the Birds? That was so inspired.
Yeah.
What was her? I can't even remember her name.
Tippi Hedren.
Tippi Hedren. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many Alfred Hitchcock movies do 12-year-olds watch?
Yeah.
I watched Psycho a lot at that age, but I hadn't seen The Birds for a few more years after that. But
yeah,
I mean, again, that seems more like a Karen Brewer decision.
Yeah.
I'm sure Karen Brewer, by the time she's 12, she will have seen most of the Hitchcock canon. But I just was not prepared. I'm a Hitchcock fanatic. So the second I saw that, and I saw the birds in the gray suit and in the blonde wig, I lost it. I actually had to pause it and just kind of like go like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing here? This girl is dressed like the Birds. So I geeked out. That was my geek out moment when I saw that costume, and I'm like, she's in a whole other plane.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do wonder how she saw that movie and which member of her family, maybe her grandma, showed it to her. Maybe they watched The Birds together. I don't know. So that could be, but I thought it was fascinating, and I love The Birds.
It's interesting because they don't talk about it in the show, but Claudia in the book series loves mysteries. She loves to read spooky mysteries. Okay. So that is part of her. That is canon. That's her personality. She just loves scary stories.
Well, there you go. I mean, that fits, and maybe maybe more that'll kind of creep in later on. But yeah, I've never, it almost makes me want to do that for Halloween myself, because I never would have thought of that for my own Halloween costume. But it just like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, whoa, I want that costume. That's so good. My respect for the show went from very good to, you know, highly respectable to like, oh my God, this show is very smart. So I loved it. But anyway, enough of me geeking out over Hitchcock. So.
I know that it was a Birds reference. I know it was, but it also worked as Moira Rose in The Crows Have Eyes 3, The Crowaning.
Oh, from Schitt's Creek.
From Schitt's Creek, yeah. And
I haven't seen that yet, but
like, I know it is. But that works too, and it just makes me so happy.
That's fantastic. Now I'm going to have to watch Schitt's Creek much sooner than I anticipated. So.
Oh my God, please do.
I will. I will.
It's the best. Unfortunately, you have to get through many seasons before you get to The Crows Have Eyes 3, The Crowaning.
Just the name of that's killing me. I love it.
They made a trailer for it, a real one. You have to find it and watch it.
Okay, I will.
Karen Brewer would love it.
I love it.
All right. Any other thoughts on that scene?
I will tell you, the bravery that Claudia shows in that scene is beyond anything I would have.
Yeah.
If I had backed myself into a corner where I had opted to cheat my way out of something or into something, as she did, there's no way in heck I would have been able to confess at that point. Like I would have rode the whole thing to the very, I mean, and then, lived with the guilt. I would have been very guilty, but being able to pull that real test out and show it and say, this is my test and this is why I failed and this is why you need to let up on me. That wouldn't have happened in my house. Like it wouldn't have gone down that way. I would have, if I had, the consequence would have been the same. They would have been like, oh, you're definitely not going to the dance. And also you're grounded for the next month. Or more. But I wouldn't have done it. I mean, I guess it really depends on what your house experience is, but I think it says a lot about Claudia and that confidence that obviously she gets her confidence from some place because, you know, having those very strict parents,
Mimi.
Sometimes, Mimi is her backbone and like her source of strength in a lot of ways. Yeah. And so I love that about her. I love that she did it. I was not expecting her to, that was like the moment that surprised me. I'm like, oh, she pulled out the, you know, and it felt like something Claudia probably would have done because she was already on the fence about it to begin with. And she's very assertive. She's very brave already. And I was not brave and I was not assertive at that age. So that's why I would have. So I'm looking at this girl doing this and going, oh, you know, I admired her a lot. I think it was a great choice. So there's no way it would happen.
Yeah. Kelly or Rachel, any additional thoughts?
I did I did like how she stood up to her parents, but it still felt like an unfinished scene to me, but I don't know why.
Oh, yeah.
They needed to say something else.
I agree.
Maybe they could have been a little bit more like, we love that you're an artist, and maybe been a little bit more positive about that. I mean, they were, but yeah.
I think acknowledging where she's coming from, but you cheated. We acknowledge you did that too and why, but we can't let this go.
I do love Janine in that scene though, just doubles down. She's like, it doesn't work unless you're consistent with the punishment.
As a psych major, I am a psychology major, and that was the first thing we learned about positive, negative reinforcement and punishment.
Yeah.
Consistency is
so Kelly, you're right. She was reading that Carl Jung textbook and So meanwhile,
it just felt so mean because it was like they weren't gonna let her go to the dance anyway, and then Janine's like, "Yeah, it only works if you." And it's like, come on, Janine, you don't need to pile on.
No, I mean, her plan already works. But then, of course, it leaves poor Stacy stranded at the dance as,
in a gorgeous costume.
Marie Antoinette looking beautiful.
Marie Antoinette, such a great costume. I loved it. And then it kind of leaves the episode on a cliffhanger. She gets a text about the babysitter's agency, right? She finds out about this agency, so it kind of leaves on a cliffhanger. But before that, we go back to the Brewers. Christy finally answers her phone, and it's Marianne, and she's calling to apologize. So they talk and they make up.
She figured out how to hack her flip phone.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's the episode. So any other thoughts about the episode?
I love that it was a very well built episode. I do find myself when Rachel, you mentioned that certain scenes felt unfinished. I feel like sometimes like, I'd give anything for maybe another 5 to 10 minutes for an episode to sort of like flesh some of this out a bit more, because the fact that Stacy was left alone at the dance. I mean, she hung out with her the teacher and the chaperone. We can assume.
That's why.
Which is that again is another reason why I am a Stacy, because I gravitated more toward the older kids and the adults growing up. People my own age intimidated me, and I didn't fit in. So even through high school, I was the freshman who had senior and junior friends, and who liked hanging out with my parents and their friends when they came together, because I felt like I related. And of course I have an older husband, and I've always dated older men, so that fits that general thing. Like, yeah, I would have been the one seeking out the teacher to hang out with, but there are moments of where I would have loved to see a little more kind of like, see a little more of Stacy at that dance, finding her way. Or I would have loved to see a little more moments with Claudia and her parents and her, that family dynamic. But it's like, it's clipped. It's all very clipped just to fit. So those are my general thoughts. But it was a great episode. I mean, it was really well-rounded overall, and had a really great message.
Oh, Rach, were you going to say something?
I was just going to agree. I think overall it was maybe, it's hard to say because I loved all the episodes equally, I think, or almost all of them. But this was maybe definitely in the top half of the episodes in terms of some of the best. Just all those, life lessons that are great for kids to see. And
yeah.
I had one kind of stray thought about that last scene with Christy and Marianne. How many times does Christy's phone ring before it's going to go to voicemail?
That's a good
point. Does she not have her voicemail set up?
My kids have never properly, I think my oldest did not set up his voicemail for a long time, until he actually had a source of employment, was like, and they all had phones for years before that. And I'm like, you better get your voicemail set up if you're applying for jobs. And then that was the point where they were like, oh, okay, I'm going to set that up. But yeah, kids are terrible about voicemail. Yeah.
They just want to text, right? They're just expecting everyone to text. So they don't even set up their voicemails. I loved this episode as well. And I loved especially the actress playing Claudia, Momona Tamada. Fun fact, do you know what else she has appeared in?
Actually, I have the IMDb pulled up here to use as a cheat sheet.
I looked it up earlier. She was a young Laura Jean in the second, in P.S. I Love You, the second Netflix series of the Laura Jean series. So yeah, she plays a young Laura Jean. And I just said, oh my gosh, that's perfect.
It really feels like all of these girls have a future ahead of them.
Yes.
They're all very good.
Yeah, agreed. The confidence, especially the actresses who play, all four sitters, they're just so confident and
Oh, and then I can't talk about it yet. Oh, there's so many episodes I want to talk. There's so many things I want to talk about. But yeah, all across the board, the kids they got for this, and of course the adults all were really good choices. Although I will admit a little bit of like, I think it was in the first episode watching Alicia Silverstone with the pizza. I'm like, she's very vegan and she's very vocal and is she eating the pizza right now? Like watching Alicia Silverstone eat pizza, and I'm like,
no, the whole point of that storyline is that Christy's mom doesn't have time to eat her pizza because she's too busy finding a sitter, so she didn't have to eat it. Although maybe they got a vegan version.
I mean, you're very correct. Yeah, but
I know these books so well, and I like every little detail. I'm always looking for like, oh, is that different from the book? Is that how it happened in the book? But I very much love that you remember these books as well as you do. That's awesome. I have my old copy here of Claudia and the Phantom Caller. So yeah.
Is that did you have that as a young person?
This is my copy. I actually found this in my mom's attic a few weeks ago when I was at her house. And
that's incredible. Oh my God.
Yep. It's pretty beat up, but
I think when you mentioned Babysitter's Club, and I think I mentioned Sweet Valley High, I was reading these books in tandem, and I wonder and kind of hope that Netflix might do a Sweet Valley High series, because I'm just like,
that would be amazing.
I was obsessed. I pivoted back and forth. My friends and I would trade back and forth Sweet Valley High and Babysitter Club books. We would get them as we could, and we just passed them around. It was
nice.
Our whole friends group. So that's how I didn't get the whole collection of all of them. But that middle school year, those years, that 3 years between like 10 and 13.
Yeah.
These books. Yeah.
I know, they were so great. Well, I think that we are just about out of time. This recap is probably 4 times as long as the actual episodes, but
I don't shut up. I'm sorry.
There's so much to talk about, but it was so much fun. Thank you, Allison, for joining us.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
So thanks again for Allison Dickson for joining us for this great conversation, recapping and discussing the Babysitters Club on Netflix, episode 2 and some of episode 1. And be sure to follow us on social media. We are WYSR_podcast on Twitter and on Instagram. We have an email. You can send us an email at whatyoushouldreadpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Goodreads. That's where we list all of the books that we talk about. So that's What You Should Read Podcast on Goodreads. And be sure to give us a rating and a review on iTunes, please.
Now you know what you should watch? That can't be right.
Sure.
You're welcome.